Welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Dingers podcast. It is Sunday, May 26th. We are getting closer and closer to this season being a third of the way done. Doc, it's getting hot in the Midwest. I just came back. It doesn't look like you're wearing the tank top this week, but you are sporting a very nice USA shirt, and I like it.
Oh my goodness, sir! It's not just any USA shirt. This is a Bobby Witt Jr. Why?
Oh,
Oh, there we
Yeah,
best
go.
yeah,
player in the
yeah.
league.
Yeah. He's pretty cool. I don't know why I went with that with like the East Coast accent. I'm not from there. I've never been there. Bobby Witt's from Texas and plays in Kansas City, but it made sense comedically. Yeah, man, it's not as hot, but I'm closeted this week. We're in the closet, and yeah, it's just Memorial Day stuff, trying to make things work with people over. So we got an indoor cigar going, and that's called privilege.
That's right. And we had a guest last week. We have a guest this week. So this week we are welcoming in Ryan, another Scout the Statline writer. Ryan, what is going on, brother? Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
yourself.
so I write for Scout the Statline, Dynasty Guru, and I spend most of my writing time at Prospects Live right now. Have a couple weekly articles coming out at least once a week, a couple series. I do a stash list about top minor leaguers that are about to come up that you should know about, under the radar guys that are in the back end of our top 500 that I think will make the jump, and then prospect battles where I go with another writer on a prospect that we disagree on. So pretty busy.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
I do a couple podcasts through them too. But yeah, so most of my time is spent there, but I chip in over at Scout the Stat Line with some player highlights mostly now and this podcast.
I wanted to ask you with the stash list. I feel like this season more than others we've had issues because we're seeing a lack of promotion to the major league
Mm.
level, and maybe that's just short term recency bias on my part. But have you found that to be a little bit more difficult while you're writing that stash list because the names just continue to be so repetitive, or are you finding fun ways to like interchange
Yeah,
names?
so it's funny because I try to not have Heston Kjerstad as a stash every week. But man, he keeps popping up because it's like he's hitting 3 or 4 home runs a week, and he'll get called up for a week and then have 3 plate appearances and then get sent back down. I don't understand what's going on with that. Uh, but yeah, no, I think I didn't monitor it as closely in the past since I wasn't writing the articles, but it has seemed like there's a bunch of guys in AAA that are just sitting there, and you're like, man, they should get the call, but it's always wishy washy on with how the organizations value the players because a lot of times they don't want to get rid of a guy. They don't want to have to cut someone because that's a wasted asset on their part. So there's always politics involved, I think, and the best players don't always play. So kind of grind your gears a little bit.
Yeah, and I think this is probably a really good representation of what you just spoke on with the Rays, right? You have Carson
Yeah,
Williams absolutely dominating. You have Junior Caminero, right? We're getting closer to Super U deadline, I think, end of June, from what I've heard. And
yeah,
it's like, okay, well, maybe that's the reasoning and the rationale. But the reality is, to your point, the Rays need every body they can,
right.
every asset they can to use for
Yeah,
leverage.
they're the perfect
So
example.
probably more or less that. Awesome. Well, that's a fantastic little rundown on yourself. We're absolutely thrilled to have you today. We're gonna keep it kind of light. Doc, you kind of joked. We've got two of us recording in a smaller room of the house, so we are really living it up with the overall audio quality. Better than we were the last couple weeks, so we figured it
There
out.
you go.
But let's
You've never had a cigar until you've had a closet cigar, my friends.
closet cigar. I was gonna say the first thing that came to mind when I saw that was that might be a slight fire risk. So please just be careful. But I also kind of like the madness of the look you have going on
It fits my vibe.
I could never handle cigars.
Yeah, I
Really?
can't
No,
either.
so I tried it in Iraq a few times, and man, it just I don't know. I think I inhaled it one too many times, and then I was like, yeah, this just not for me.
It's funny. I've never smoked a cigarette in my whole life. Well, I did one for a movie prop the other day, actually, so it's not true. But up until then, um, yeah, man, I never never did that stuff. I jumped straight over, and then I had come from high school and college experience of inhaling this other smoky stuff that you smoke and it makes you feel nice, and marijuana. And dang, now I can't run for office, or can I? It's 2024, I guess.
Aren't
Well,
you
you might not
Canadian?
be able to in the Midwest.
I'm American now, bud.
Oh,
Look at this.
Look at
Look
the
at this.
shirt.
It says I voted. This is not even from today. I just haven't watched this in like weeks. This is like we're revealing the unhinged nature of Darren Doc Eisenhower right now. In case it wasn't
The
clear.
real question is, what year is the sticker I voted
Yeah.
from?
Well, that would be a problem because I just became a citizen. So yeah,
that would be really deep into the rabbit hole, I think, if we got into
Sure.
that one.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get back on track. We've got some fun questions today beyond the cigar talk. First one, I think, is just checking in on each of our fantasy leagues. Again, we're about a third of the way through the season now. I think we are starting to see some of the hitters wake up. Vlad and Olson this week finally started to come around a little bit. Bobby Witt, nice week as well. So, Ryan, I wanted to start off with you. First and foremost, give me a range about how many teams and how many leagues you're playing in, and then how you're doing overall in those leagues.
so between Dynasty and Redraft and Best Ball, I think I have 8 or 9 teams right now. For TGFBI, I'm actually doing pretty well. I went with a heavy hitter approach during the draft, and I got Ellie, Gunner, O'Neill Cruz, Riley Green, Ronald Acuna. So my hitting really has taken off, and I ended up snagging Paul Skeens in the last round. So I was kind of waiting on him to come in, and since he's come up, I think I'm sitting in 30th overall right now out of 380 or whatever, and first in my league. Uh, but then for my dynasty teams, uh, the one, the TGG Dynasty League that I think we're all a part of, right? Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sitting pretty there. I'm sitting in first place with, I think, 138 points on the back of one Bobby Witt Jr. So feeling pretty good. I have a few orphan teams that I took over a year or two ago with middling, whatever, success, middling.
Yeah.
I'm in third place in another one. So I think, honestly, I think Scout the Statline and the guys over at Prospects Live and stuff has really elevated my level of play, because I wasn't the greatest at Dynasty Baseball. I loved baseball always, but once I started getting on this writing train, man, it opened up my eyes to a whole new side of it.
That's a superb plug. My goodness. Cut it. We're done. We're done. That's it. That's the podcast.
Doc, how many leagues are you in?
I mean, I feel like I used to feel like 2 or 3 was too many. Now I had no choice. I've had to expand my horizons here. I got 3 Yahoo leagues, different. One's a like full dynasty. The other one's keeper that you're in. The other one's a redraft. And I got my what do you call it? TGFBI, which is the fancy. There's actually 420 teams, which is important when I tell you what place I'm in. Yeah. And the fan tracks. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 real leagues, and then the other 2 are like kind of like there's when you get to like certain levels of nerd geek, there's these like kind of what would the word be, gimmicky almost kind of leagues, like we only pick minor leaguers in this one.
Oh yeah.
I think 30 teams are in it. It's awesome. Chris Knock is running that. You're in that too, I think.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
Ryan? Yeah, that's a really fun. I'm excited for that one. Anyway, so about 4 active leagues there. You want to know how I'm doing?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
How am I doing? Okay, so I noticed, it's so crazy. I couldn't help but notice that Ryan left out the TDG, the Dynasty Guru redraft league,
Oh,
which he's not. I won't say how he's doing, but he's basically doing the same I'm doing in the Dynasty league. We have a Dynasty Guru redraft and a Dynasty. The Dynasty, I mean, it's kind of probably a rebuild, or not rebuild. We just started our league up, so probably a slow roll. I got some sweet prospects there. But I'm second overall out of 20 teams in the redraft, which is pretty cool. Yeah, really nailed. I got Skeens late. It was really funny pitching staff. I had like I got Blanco really fast off waivers. I had no choice but to believe immediately because my other guys were Brady Singer and Mitch Keller and Chris Sale, which sounds pretty good now. It sounded a lot riskier at the time. So, and then just, yeah, kind of been grinding the wire. Yeah, the TGFBI, man, it's so, okay, Ryan, confirm. It's so annoying when you're first getting used to the weekly FAAB ads, waiver
Yeah,
ads, right?
yeah. It
Because it's a,
takes getting used to.
yeah, I'm getting it now because I learned. I swear to God, 3 or 4 weeks in a row, I kept missing the deadline. It's also an hour earlier than every other league. Like I would actually go there half an hour late and never learn my lesson. Anyway, so I am like, yeah, second last in my league. So yeah, I'm really far behind overall. But I made some sick pickups last week. My league's not that good, so I actually could maybe make some moves here. I did get Jared Jones. My pitching's pretty
There you
stellar.
go.
I got Chris Sale in basically every league, which really helps because he's been amazing. I took that risk, and yeah, this last week, like I picked up Winseal, Perez, and Alec Burleson. I kind of like those guys
Yeah,
in a league this deep. I'm kind of rambling here. I guess I would go ahead and say that mixed bag. I just 10-1. I'm looking at my favorite home league. I'm cruising up the head-to-head ranks. Mostly doing well. Looking like I'm rebuilding in a couple leagues. So you're not getting total garbage from a guy who has no idea how to play fantasy baseball.
has Scout the Statline helped
And
you
that's
immensely?
yeah. Well, I mean, I am Scout the Statline brother. Have you read the Sunday Smoke? Absolutely not. No, that model has no.
Such
That's
modesty, Doc. Such modesty.
Listen, we got to keep things spicy here. I just rambled on about my fantasy teams for like 5 minutes, so we got to make sure our listeners and watchers are paying attention. No, the model is fantastic. Check it out. There's all kinds of new prospects popping up, and if you want to get ahead of your league, yeah, you can follow Twitter. You can follow Doc Holiday Dyna and succeed all day. But these, you know, there's people are all going to eventually start saying the same thing, and it's going to become an echo chamber. And by then, it's too late. If you want to get ahead of it, ahead of the curve, and find the guys nobody's talking about, then the statistical model from Scout the Stat Line to peak projections, it will beat us to the punch almost every time.
So we are doing a player highlight. Each one of us are writing for the player highlight,
Yep.
right? Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think you guys will like this. I wrote about. I think I'm going to pronounce it wrong because I'm terrible with international names. But Josue Gonzalez, the catcher for the Yankees, Josue. Is that how you would pronounce it?
I
Josue.
This is your boat. You're sinking in it.
Yeah, I'll sink it. We're just going to go with that. Mr. Gonzalez,
there you go.
20-year-old for the Yankees, complex. And I wrote about him because he popped up on MILB Tracker, which is I use just to quickly source through some, statistics, and I cross-referenced it with Scott the Statline. And I want to say it popped up with a peak projection, no regression of 55 home runs. And I was like, okay, so maybe not that good. I have it right here. It was 271 batting average, a 688 slug with 55 home runs. And his full regression was 20 home runs. So like you can see the variation in what these complex numbers can definitely pump into the model and skew it. But I loved last year when I was really tracking. I think Lazaro Montes was a really good piece last year, and Caminero, as he was really starting to continue that push towards top 50 and then top 20 and then top 10, where the algorithm on STS really started to lock in, and you started to see really that this prospect was someone to care about. And it seemed to be just early enough where that, like that Twitter sphere that you spoke on, Doc, didn't necessarily make it too well known. And I think that's what I'm enjoying this season too, is just kind of cross-referencing some of these guys, keeping an eye on Trey Morgan, who is another player highlight, Eric Batanti. And then Ryan, you actually wrote about the kid from Baltimore, who I didn't even know about. So I'm definitely following him now.
Yeah,
Is it Leonardo Arias? Is that
I think
correct?
it's Leandro maybe, Leonardo
Okay, that
maybe.
sounds correct.
I can't remember, but
Sounds
no,
correct.
he's definitely. I've been watching a lot of his because I always like to get eyes on through video at least as much as I can uh, to pair with the stat lines. I think that's important. That's kind of what we as analysts should kind of focus on because we put out content, but we need to put it out thoughtfully uh, and get the whole picture. I think. Yeah, he's definitely someone that we should be paying attention to. I picked him up in a bunch of leagues.
Yeah, and I think kind of echoing what you just said, Johnny Formello's swing last year was something I thought was really interesting. He was someone that is actually being written about by another one of our writers for our player highlights, and kind of pairing, like you said, the statistic to the actual visualization of what we know about
Hmm.
baseball as something that we think can work. Right? Luke Adams is one of the names from Milwaukee organization that comes to mind. I don't care what he does with his stat line. I'm always going to have concerns because of the mechanics of the
Right.
swing. Like that's my evaluation. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's kind of the fun. Okay, you guys had talked about a few names. I just want to really quick hit on. Doc, you said you have Chris Sale in a lot of leagues, so I'm not even going to ask you on that one. I'm going to spin this one to Ryan. Ryan, do you think Chris Sale is back? And if not, are you aggressively moving him in redraft competitive dynasty teams for a bag of assets? What's your take on Chris Sale?
He's not. He's not going to be what he was when he was 28 or 29, right? But if you're competitive in your dynasty league, with pitchers, it's always a fine line. Obviously depends on the return. If it's a Godfather deal where you can't refuse, obviously you take it. Uh, but if you're fighting in the top half of the league, I think you have to keep him. I think what he's doing unless he gets injured, of course, but all the behind the scenes numbers look encouraging, and he just whooped the Pirates' butt today, and he was throwing 97. Like speed looks good, breaking balls look good, off speed looks good. He's not back, but man, it's close.
Yeah, his number. I mean, just if you look at his stat line, take the age out of it, it's pretty ridiculous. Ryan, and then you had mentioned a shortstop that we've talked about a few times on the show this season, and that's O'Neill
Oh,
Cruz. I want both your takes on this, but Ryan, I want you to start. O'Neill Cruz, we've seen the bat velocity now with the swing speed. We've seen the exit velocity this week. First player in Statcast history to have two balls hit over 120 miles per hour. We see the potential in O'Neill Cruz. Are we a year early? Are we a few years early? Or do you think we may just never fully see him put it all together?
so I'm a Pirates fan, so I've obviously have invested in O'Neill Cruz long term, and I think what many people forget is that he's been in the majors 3 years now at this point, but he only really has a season worth of at bats, and it's been derailed by his ankle injury last year. Uh, and the year before it was just a real short cup of coffee, I believe. He's still learning to hit, and I think he's 25, maybe 26 now, which it doesn't sway me at all either way. Thinking if he's going to ever be that 40-40 guy that you can see, but what I'm seeing from him in the games is that against right-handed hitters, he or pitchers, he has a good plan of attack, and he he doesn't chase outside the zone all that much anymore. He cut that down. I believe I haven't looked at the numbers recently. He had a hot stretch there where he was just destroying the ball. Uh, but I think you're going to see a little higher, but I don't know if we'll ever get to the 40-40. I think that ankle injury, I thought it'd be okay speed wise, and he's still fast, but he, I don't know if he's ever going to hit more than 25 stolen bases in a year at this point. Uh, and the eventual move off shortstop, which everybody thinks is happening, he already has. I think he was tied for the most errors in the league last time I saw. He bumbles routine plays, so I think right or left field is the ultimate uh, position for him. Which with that arm, he'll be one of the best outfielders in the league if that happens. But I don't know. I think 30-25 seasons aren't out of the realm of possibility. 35 at a peak year, and I think he can hit 250, 260. He's never going to walk a lot. That's not his game. But I think he'll be a valuable fantasy asset in the top 25 hitters for Dynasty, at least. I have him ranked, I think, 22 in their last updated rankings.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at the stat line: 7 home runs, 4 stolen bases, batting 247, OBP 302, in all presumed a down year, right? In a
Yeah,
developmental year, as you kind of spoke on. He is 25, will not turn 26 until
yeah.
October. So this is his age 25 season. I think that's kind of nice. Next year will be age 26 season. You know, if the breakout is in 26 or 27, at that point you still get 3 to 4 years of prime
Right.
production. And Doc, we've talked about him a lot this year. Has your confidence swayed at all with O'Neal Cruz? We've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And what is your thought?
I mean, as for this year, he seems like this is the guy in terms of like cold and hot extremes. So it's kind of annoying if you're competing, contending, especially in a head-to-head format where it's Jekyll Hyde. You don't know who you're gonna get. We've talked about him. We talked about him a bunch last week. I was just thinking, since we got a Pirates guy here, and I don't really want to be part. I don't want too many Pirates on my team who aren't named Jones, Skeens, Cruz. But there's someone new who I have seen plenty here in Indy, and
Uh-huh.
Nick
Yeah.
Gonzalez. He is intriguing the heck out of me. So he came into the league as supposedly a masterful hit tool kind of
Yeah.
guy. He's supposed to be a really elite bat. And then he got hurt and came back, and he was all of a sudden striking out a bunch. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! We got a smaller guy who's supposed to be a hit tool first guy who strikes out all the time. I was really out. Like, and I even after I saw him hitting a home run last year, and in Indy, I'm like, oh, looks that's pretty cool. It's gonna affect some bias, but I didn't, I still couldn't buy in. This year, though, I'm looking at his metrics on Savant. Like he's crushing the ball.
Yeah.
He's really like turned into this guy that I don't think anyone really foresaw, and so I guess I'm starting to buy in because I can get him for free. I got him today for free in a bunch of leagues. What do you think? What are we getting long term here,
He
Ryan?
is. So he had a big hole in his swing that was exposed in the upper minors. He couldn't hit high fastballs. He has fixed that. And what you're seeing is he's barreling in the majors 17% of the time right now. And even in AAA, he was barreling them at 8.2, which is 75th percentile. Uh, he, like you said, he came in as a pure hitter with a good hit tool. And I think you're starting to see that he is able to get the barrel on the ball now. And he, man, he was a spark plug the Pirates needed. Their offense was anemic before he came up, and then he already has, I think, the third or fourth most RBIs on the team already. Uh, I think he's going to be up all year. I think they'll send down, hopefully, cut Rowdy Tellez' ass when Hayes comes back. Uh,
Every team Telez is
God,
on says that, right? I'm a Brewer fan, and I said the same thing for years.
I,
God,
I thought when they first signed him, I was like, all right, maybe he hit 30 home runs that 1 year. I was like, maybe it'll be all right.
maybe. Yeah.
This dude just sucks.
He sucks.
He's so bad.
All right, so wait, Daniel Vogelbach, you have to have a hit. Daniel Vogelbach or Rowdy Telez.
I'll take Vogelbach because he might walk.
Doc, who are you taking? You taking Vogelbach or you taking
I mean,
Telez?
that's good rationale. Take the walk, yeah,
You'll go Vogelbach.
sure.
Vogelbach can hit a home run
Ryan,
at least.
yeah, true. Telez will just strike out.
God.
I'm glad you brought up Nick Gonzalez, Doc. And Ryan, I wanted to see if you remember this. So when he was drafted out of New Mexico State, he had a stretch. And again, at New Mexico State, higher elevation, ball flew in college. It's a whole nother topic for another time with home run records now for college. But had a really big power output there at New Mexico State. And there was a weekend where he had reported 5 or 6 home runs in a couple double
Mhm.
headers that really got him pumped. He was drafted with these power numbers coming into obviously your Pirates organization and then being known for more of a contact bat. Do you remember when he was drafted in that power profile, or is this something that is developing in your prospect eyes as Gonzalez?
So I was slightly aware of his career at New Mexico State, and I knew with the air and everything, it's a hitter's
Yep.
park, obviously. Uh, and with metal bats, I always take a grain of salt with college stats, man. You like to see him in a Cape Cod league to see with wooden bats.
Yeah.
Uh, his exit velocities were reportedly always decent. So what kind of the STS motto it seems like is like you want a guy with a hit tool, and eventually they can grow into that power, right? So that's what that's kind of where I focus all my attention on is hit tools, and you trust hitters to figure it out, right? And then power will eventually come. Maybe 5'9", he's 5'9", so I don't know how much power he'll get to. I mean, of course, there's Altuve, and there's always exceptions to the rule, but I think 20 home runs is realistic in a year with a 260 average. He's a decent hitter.
Doc, you said you were able to snag him in a few leagues today. Were those dynasty leagues that he had been cut loose on? What kind of availability were you seeing from Gonzalez?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere. It's funny. I got him like everywhere but my home league. Um, some guy I think just needed a body with some injuries. I don't think he. I don't want. I can't give anyone credit for making a smart
I had
move.
cut him the year
Huh.
prior in my dynasty league
Yeah.
Mm,
because I was
yeah,
completely out on him. Because that
yeah,
when you saw him swing, he was getting just destroyed. But like I said, by those high fastballs, and he could not figure it out the whole year. So I was like, well, okay, he was on the cutting block for me. But
yeah. Well, when a hit tool guy can't hit,
right,
I'm done.
yeah,
Right? Like, what do we have to offer here? So yeah, I think I got him. Yeah, I got him in our league. There, we're a little keeper league where actually Ryan tapped out this year.
my
Soft.
bad.
Um, and then but we got Matt in. And my bats, I just can't do anything right other than Aaron Judge. Apparently, my pitching in every league I'm in is so good, but my bats in this league, ooh, yeah, we're gonna need to have a strong second half. Hopefully, Evan Carter is to blame.
Yeah, Carter's had a rough
Yeah.
year. Okay, I've got one more question for you both before we move on to our next segment. And this is my patented mid-recording, throw out the wall, Doc. You're gonna love this, but I think it's a pretty easy question. Ronald Acuna today going on the IL. It is the left knee this time. Acuna said he did not have the same feeling that he had in his right knee when he tore the ACL. Today he was injured when planting his left leg on the way back to second base. I think an immediate IL is not good. MRIs are be or an MRI is being done. So my question for you two is pretty simple at this point. Are we as a consensus starting to get concerned with the long-term dynasty aspect that Ronald Acuna is as the consensus number one overall coming into 2024? Ryan, I'm gonna let you start it off.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been thinking about that a lot. I don't have him in any dynasty leagues, but like I said, I have him in TGFBI, and I'm kind of scrambling as we speak, looking at who I can pick up to replace him. Even though it really wasn't, he's having not that great of a year, so he wasn't contributing all that much for me. His strikeout rate has crept back up to his career norms, which I kind of thought was going to happen. It 12% reduction in strikeout rate just wasn't sustainable, and he's barreling the ball less than last year. I think his right knee is bothering him still after his little uh, tweak in spring training, and I think that was causing a real power outage for him. And now with this left knee or right knee, is it the left or right knee now?
Today is the
Right.
left
Okay.
knee.
So it wasn't the surgically repaired one.
Correct. Yes.
But yeah, so it's interesting because he has been going first in every draft in every league pretty much last year and this year. Uh, I think I still have him ranked number one. We'll see what the MRI shows, and hopefully it is just inflammation and he's just out a month, like he said. Uh, but I think next update we do uh, at Prospects Live, I'll probably have Bobby Witt number one over him. I think he's still in the top echelon, top six guys or whatever. But I think there's cases to be made where you can bump him down at this point.
Yeah. Absolutely. Doc, what is your take on Acuna now?
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't have any legs anymore. So, I mean, I hope the guy heals up, but what can I think about his stolen base potential going forward? We're talking about, Neil Cruz and his ability being limited. So, Acuna's still been stealing quite a bit of bases
Yeah.
this year
Yeah,
on a
16.
on a hobbled knee, so nothing's impossible with this guy. But you know, um, he's still 26. He'll be 27 next year. I'm just trying to think. Still pretty darn young, but man, if this is a torn ACL or something like that, hopefully he's not. Then I don't, I'm not drafting him over Bobby Witt in a dynasty anymore. And it's crazy how quick our game changes because people would actually like they kind of get mad at you, or it seemed like they would. I didn't take him in. Oh, I think I got one number one slot in those CBS mocks I was in over the summer or off season. Um, and I don't think anyone ever moved from the Acuna pick. And it felt almost like, yeah, you'd be just being a goofball. Like you were messing around if you defied that one. It was really the whole industry was 100%. This is our number one guy probably for a long time. So it's crazy how fast our game can change, right? And I'm freaking stuck with Corbin Carroll in our TDG dynasty. My first round pick. Anyway, yeah, just things can change, man. You got it's frustrating, but it's also like, hey, it's fun, right? That's what we're playing for is the wild and crazy dynamics. It's not fun when guys are getting hurt and their careers are affected, but it's unpredictable, and hope he recovers for the sake of baseball.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think this is just how the game rolls. And it's funny. I think of this back to I want to say 2021 or 2022, Christian McCaffrey in NFL fantasy, where it was the foregone conclusion, and then the injury again happened, and he got knocked out only to rise back to the top. I think Acuna could do the same if Ryan, to your point, if that right leg can fully get healthy. We see this a lot more in the NFL with knee injuries, where the presumed expectation is that they will be fine after surgery. I think a lot of David Bakhtiari's injury he had with Green Bay, where it took years, and he may be done, but if you have even the slightest problem with that initial surgery, it can cause lasting impact. And I think we've seen that with Acuna, and that tweak that you brought up, Ryan, I think really is kind of the catalyst for that this season. We've seen the power drop off, we've seen the average drop off, the aggressiveness drop off a little bit as well, still there on the base paths. So I definitely think there's concern there. And to the point of scrambling, you have to do what you have to do now in leagues. Thankfully, he wasn't the number one asset this season that you are replacing. But moving on to our next topic, guys, we are going to talk about one pitcher and one hitter that we fully are buying in on. It looks like I have some of the more obvious ones, which is okay. Doc and Ryan, I like the names that you guys threw out there. Ryan, being the guest today, I want you to go ahead and start us off. We have a very, very hot name for the bat for you. And then it looks like we're staying in the same division for the pitcher.
Okay.
So talk a little bit about your guys and why you are so confident in
Man,
both of
so
these.
my hitter that I chose to pick for this, I've been touting him since last year after he was drafted. Uh, I believe out of Arizona State. Uh, Man, Luke Keyshaw is the name. I should mention that first. Uh, he is someone that he's a pure baseball player. I kind of talk about this all the time. Like when you watch as much games as I do, uh, you can kind of pick out guys that are just baseball players, and he's when you see him play, you're like, man, this guy, he's going to be good, and everything backs it up. He has a 333 average right now, 458 OBP, 529 slug at high A at 21 years old, uh, with 6 home runs and 14 stolen bases so far, and he's walking more than he's striking out at this point. He'll be promoted soon to Double A, no doubt. But the underlying numbers is what gets me going. 5.7% swinging strike rate, 88.9 zone contact, 12% O swing, so he doesn't chase at all. Uh, my man can just flat out play, and he's going to stick up the middle, either second base or center field. So he's going to be playing a prime position, and he, I just, I think he's going to be not a superstar, but he's going to be a star. I think.
Yeah, I like the profile. You actually got me into on him. I want to say this week I hadn't been keeping an eye on him at all. And as soon as you started kind of spinning the barrel a little bit, Twitter did as well, it seemed like. But numbers at Arizona State were really nice: 55 games, 18 home runs, batted 353, 28 strikeouts to 22 walks. So keeping the approach in hand, and then getting drafted and putting up good numbers for Cedar Rapids this year. 6 home runs, like you said, batting 333. I think this could be a very, very fast riser. And it's fun to kind of stake your claim on one of these players like you have and see them have success.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So who is the pitcher that you're feeling just as
Well, but
confident about?
before we move on, I just want to say how impressive it is that Luke Keyshaw can do this with his eyes closed. If you
What do you
look
mean,
at it,
Doc?
if you look at his baseball reference picture, dude is staring into the sun or something. He's just dude was hitting the wacky tobacco still.
I was gonna say,
That's
do you think
I
he
don't
was
know.
hanging out in the closet, or what
He's
was
a
going on
California
there?
boy. You never know. All right.
His baseball reference picture is pretty fantastic. You are correct. Doc, what do you think about Keishel before Ryan goes into his picture? Is this a prospect that you've been monitoring? Is this a profile that you like?
Kind of the same as you, Matt. Just it was a name everyone kind of was obligated to mention. He was just in there, and for me, some other names stood out more. So, hey, cat's out the bag, folks. Pay attention to this STS models, and yeah, you can beat the crowd because he's gone in a lot of leagues. It's fun though. I mean, I'm in varying degrees of keepers and dynasties. Dude, some he is available in some of my
Yeah.
leagues still, but they are just more shallow. Where my worst prospect is an absolute stud. So yeah,
Again,
uh,
I'll always love the
Yeah.
modesty. So the question I think I have, Ryan, before you get to your pitcher is, do you think there's a chance that Luke passes Brooks Lee over the course of the next couple of years in regards to like organizational commitment?
Mm, I think Brooks is a pretty good shortstop.
Okay.
And I think Keyshaw can't play short. His arm isn't good enough for shortstop. Uh, it seems like he has the range in the games that I've watched, but I don't think he could probably be a backup there, but it wouldn't be his
Okay.
primary position. And I still like Brooks Lee too. He's another guy that he doesn't wow you with anything, but he just plays baseball, man, and he puts up solid line. Like you can't he just puts up solid lines, and he'd be a solid fantasy player once he gets the call.
so mid for fantasy, bro.
It's
He's gonna
but that's what wins championships is those mid guys.
in in 30 teamers
No, no,
basically.
no,
Like
no.
he's.
You need
I'm like the like I
you need middle
Brooks Lee for
infielders.
me is like the. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, I'm over here getting excited about Nick Gonzalez and
Right.
saying I can't get excited about Brooks Lee. But
Good catch
yeah,
there, Doc. I'm glad you did that yourself.
yeah, he could. Okay, I mean, best case scenario, he starts hitting. Thing is, it's the hit tool thing. He needs to make sure the hit tool. I've seen a couple moments in the minors where it's like he's hitting, I think 230 or something like that, 240. And I'm like, okay, well, you need to be a hit first guy. Hit for 300. Hit like in the minors. Let's see that. So. Yeah, in terms of real life baseball player, though, I think Ryan's right on the money. I just have to come in there because I'm like the ultimate Brooks Lee is mid for fantasy truther.
Yeah, but I think this is also kind of the problem. Like we're talking about guys that we like here, and Ryan, I'm in the same boat as Doc. I'm not a Brooks Lee guy, but it's not because of anything Brooks Lee has really done. It's just there was a season where it imprinted in my mind, and like that's just how I move forward with the profile. And he hasn't done anything to break
Yeah.
that. I think that's the big thing that we have to be mindful of as well as a prospect evaluators is what is our bias, why is our bias, and what could be done to break that bias. Where Brooks Lee could absolutely turn out to be a Dansby Swanson style player where you've set it and forget it for 10 years. Like that's amazing. And you build around that foundation, but you have to be willing to look past that
Right.
bias first and foremost. Okay. So you have Logan Evans
Yep.
next, which another player I stumbled across a couple of weeks ago. So I want you to talk kind of in depth about him and why you're so excited.
Yeah. So I saw him pitch at he pitched for Pittsburgh University, uh, University of Pittsburgh, not Pittsburgh University, uh, and I got to see him pitch last year, and I didn't really know anything about him. I randomly went to a game and he was pitching, and he blew me away then. So I kind of wrote his name down and I just forgot about him honestly. And then he was drafted in the 12th round by Seattle, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know he was draft eligible, to be honest with you. But so he stands 6'4", 215 pounds, big guy. He when I saw him at Pittsburgh, he was only thrown 93, 94, and it seems like all the reports I've seen, he's topping out at 97 now, and he sits around 95, 94, 95 now, whereas he was topping out around there before he was drafted. But he has four good pitches that are all plus pitches right now, and he has good command as well. So they bumped him up to Double A uh, to start the year this year, and he has a 22.4% strikeout rate and only a 7.7 walk rate. Everything, all the games I've watched him pitch, he tunnels his fastball well off of his cutter, and I think Seattle is one of the uh, organizations you trust the most to handle pitchers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you talked about him and corrected me with the Seattle. I was thinking about Evans for the White Sox, who is another riser. But Logan Evans definitely getting some buzz this spring, and kind of that jump in velo that you talked about, I
Mhm.
think is obviously something to look for, right? That is a massive production and skill jump that can completely change the profile. What are your expectations for possibility within the actual Seattle rotation, right? We know this being a very pitcher dominated team and we have depth. Do you think he can crack the rotation as of next year, or do you think there's a possibility that they use him as a stretch, high leverage reliever and then rotate him back into that rotation?
I think, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could see starts for the Mariners in the second half this year if he keeps pitching the way he has been. Uh, you have Brian Wu, who has injury concerns, uh, and Emerson Hancock is just a guy at this point. I think we can all agree on that. Uh, I don't know. I'm looking at the next guys, and I don't see anybody behind Hancock that you think, oh, they have to be the next man up. They have Dallas Keuchel floating around in their AAA squad, but uh, I, it's probably like a 30% chance he starts for them this year. But I think next year, I think there's definitely a chance that he'll crack the rotation.
Alrighty, Doc, it's your turn. We're gonna give you the spotlight here. You've got a couple names, one of which you love, as well as the whiskey you're holding up there. Was that a little banana whiskey you just showed us?
Oh no, my friend, I am still a man. I,
Howler Head
I
brand. Sorry.
this is William Rose Distillery, which you've not heard of because it's local Indiana. Cedar Street Bourbon. If you're ever in Indiana, Zionsville, Indiana is the name of the town. It's really cool people there, and this is really smooth stuff. I think all of it's over 100 proof, but it's not to do it to kick you in the teeth. It's just high quality.
Favorite whiskey?
I just told
That's
you.
it.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
No, I'm really happy with like that's it. The taste it disappears like water. This one specifically, they have other brands of whiskey and bourbon there, but that one's my favorite. How about you?
Oh, I'm a big fan of pretty much all whiskey. I've been really into Scotch lately, and
I can't get into
you
it.
know, I thought I couldn't either. And then one Thanksgiving, my rich brother-in-law's brother had a 16-year-old Lagavulin. Buddy, it doesn't. Eating or drinking a campfire doesn't sound good, but when you do it, it's amazing. So,
We'll have to hang out, and I'll teach you how to smoke a
oh,
cigar. You teach me how to drink
okay.
scotch.
Max Clark will be up in Double A soon.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
that's a
Speaking of
good
which,
that's a good transition, Doc. So
yeah,
it's probably obvious now who your hitter is, but break him down for me a little bit.
yeah. So Max Clark, man, it's kind of been like a tough year for some of these guys. I went I went strong with, or maybe they stand out more to me. Victor Scott. I just think it's in hindsight now such a mishandling by St. Louis. Still holding out hope long term. Brock Wilken got smashed in the face with a fastball. My gosh, dude, he actually came out scorching hot from that. That he's scuttling a bit. Max Clark, his first few games was scuttling a bit. Scuttling is the word I'm saying, folks. I'm just a redneck. And so, but ever since he's been great. I mean, his numbers on the season are pretty solid, but they're even better in May. This is over at Lakeland. Yeah, he's got uh, 290 batting average with a 400 OBP. He's walking more than he struck out. These are May numbers from May 1st to May 25th. Only one home run at that time, which is the knock. However, I'm excited in his last few games. He's got what's that? Double, double, double. In his last 5 games, he's got three doubles and a home run. So we're starting to see a little bit of power already, which is really exciting. He's walking even more. This is a guy where the approach is just so advanced for his age, and it's not going to go away. And his speed is there too; it's not going away. It's not like one of those guys where he's stealing a bunch in the minors, and then he's not going to do that later on. Like, this is a potential, Trey Turner type of guy in terms of speed that doesn't go away in your 30s, 70 grade stuff, and he plays a mean center field. So you're not worried about his playing time. They'll put him out there, just like the St. Louis tried so hard with Victor Scott, skipped him right from Double A up there. Um, and it was because of his electric defense and just what he brought to the table. Max Clark is a really smart kid. He's funny. He's kind of got these posts where you wouldn't be wrong for maybe you wouldn't be off base thinking, is this kid, has he gone into cocky land? He seems like he crosses that confidence line a couple times. Maybe a little bit like Bryce Harper-ish, but then you actually listen to his interviews, away from just the generic, toneless Twitter posts. And he's a smart guy. He's humble. He's talking about having kids one day. He's only like 19 years old. He just kind of he's surprisingly mature. So I just love everything about Max Clark. I do think he's a thick boy. He's very very strong. 6 foot, 205, and I think he can tap into. He can if he ever decides he wants to start pulling a baseball, that would be his best way to hit home runs. The challenge will be playing in Comerica Park for Detroit. And yeah, hope this is off. His career's off to a fine start. He's at low A. Hopefully, he doesn't stumble too much at high A, and I think he'll be there soon.
Ryan, what do you think of Clark? Obviously, highly touted draft prospect. Showcasing that average, showcasing that speed so far. Is this a player that you still have, I would assume, within your top 20, top 30 prospects? And if so, what do you think future projection would be with Doc, I think, laying out the Trey Turner concept for himself, which I like. What are your thoughts?
So I have him. Let me pull up my most recent. I have him 31 in my top prospects. So he's just
Okay.
outside the top 30. And I'm worried about the power. And I want to ask Doc, are you concerned at all about the 50% ground ball rate that he's shown so far, and even just a 23% fly ball rate?
Well, he was in high school at this point a year ago. This is about the time I actually saw him in Indiana. Saw him play. Yeah, it looks more like doubles power right now. Folks. Please, when I get excited about Max Clark, it's not about this year. It's not even about next year. This is a long term thing, and yeah, I mean, there's a chance it doesn't become. I don't know if I would even project him for 30 home runs. When I say Trey Turner, I meant like the longevity in terms of his speed not disappearing. But I do think that 20 seems to be realistic to me, just based on his build and his natural strength. He's just a kind of a freakish athlete. And so the question will be, like I said before, how much does he want to pull the ball, to try to pull the ball, because he's such a great all fields kind of hitter. Hey, Freddie Freeman, was one of those guys where he was 66, so 6'5". He's a bit of a different story, but Clark's not a tiny. I guess this is where I'm trying to get at. This is not a tiny guy. He's over 200 pounds already. Very very strong. 6 feet tall. There's no. It's projectable here, and I guess if he was doing this on double A, triple A, 21, 22 years old. If he's still this guy, then okay. But I'd be kind of shocked if this body type became a 10 home run hitter.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting concept within projectability. Trey Turner from 2016 at age 23 through 2020 didn't have over 19 home runs in 73 games. His first stint in 16, he had 13, so that was a pretty good showing in less than half a season. Following up in 2017 in 98 games, he had 11 home runs. Playing an entire season, 2018, 162 games, Turner had 19 home runs. 2019 had 19. 2020 had 12 in 59 games because of the COVID shortened season. But I think Comerica is going to be a really big piece in the equation. But I do think there's the opportunity for Clark to, to tally some of those home runs to get to 10 to 15 in his early years before that, that real body at 26, 27 sets in. And I think roughly 20 is fair. Do you guys think that's an okay range for him, or do you think that's a bit high in projecting?
I do want Ryan's thoughts on this because I know I just went on a bit of a tangent, but I just kind of threw it out there haphazardly. But the Trey Turner thing, I guess, would be kind of the best case outcome actually.
That
Yes.
would be his 90%
And,
outcome. Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, I mean, but it's like also I'm looking at Trey Turner. So he was a college bat and didn't really display power at any level until and we saw 13 and 300 at bats in 2016 in the major leagues. It wasn't really kind of until he got to the majors, which is so random, that he really started flashing that power. I'll ask. So yeah, Ryan, what do you think about what Matt asked you? But also, I'm not familiar with. I forget. I've been playing fantasy baseball for a while, but I actually wasn't diving into how Treya changed his game. Do you have that in your brain?
I not off the top of my head. But
Mm.
for Max Clark, what I see in what the videos I've watched of him, the he'll need to make a swing change, right? He's more of a line drive hitter at this point, uh,
Hmm.
and I mean I think that plays up in Comerica. He'll be doubles, triples all day. I think 15 to 18. I think 20 is like his peak home run output at this point. He might eventually hit a 25, but I'd be surprised, honestly. But again, we're talking about what 18 or 19-year-old kid. He can add power and make that swing tweak if he wants to.
Yeah, it's just like I feel like he does have that edge to him where he wants to be the superstar, and dude, I think he's probably aware he can't be a superstar hitting 10 to 12 home runs, which it's like it sounds silly, but that's a factor. And yeah, it's something that stats only guys will go crazy about. I know Ross kind of gives me a hard time with the scout talk, but I love baseball IQ.
Yeah,
I think that's something that people were saying that about Carson Williams, and I said this year's going to be a big year for him. I keep hearing this baseball IQ. Well, and that's what's going to cure his immense approach issues. And so far, it's looking like he's turning that corner. Finally, it took him a while, and so yeah, I'm excited to see if Clark can. It's because like you said, it's going to take an overhaul or at least a pretty major adjustment. But if anyone can do it, it'd be a freak athlete with a high IQ, high baseball IQ.
So it's interesting. 2018, 2019 Trey Turner, you asked was what was the change? What was to aid that power? And really it dates back to 2016, as you said, in those 300 at bats with those 13 home runs. The real only data that I have that shows anything is from 18 and 19. His pull percentages was at 43.1% in 2018 and 42.4% in 2019. In his first cup of coffee in 2016, Trey was pulling at 36.8%. So, I mean, that's a 6-7% difference between 16 and 18. 2017, you started to see a little bit of a creep up at 39.3% pull. And then this season is actually his career high when he only has 2 home runs this year, is at 49.5% pull. And he's really taken away the opposite field approach. And maybe that's why we're seeing more of the struggles. Last year with Philly as well at 39.6%, coming off of 45.4% previously with the Dodgers. we've had some struggles since he signed that contract in Philadelphia. I'm wondering if him trying to elevate the ball and pull it in that shorter park is kind of equated to some of those problems. But you brought that up with Clark and needing to pull the ball. I would say, almost from looking at Trey's numbers, if we're using this as a model or any kind of a template, like, I don't know if I want Clark to pull the ball. I think I would rather have him just stay with his approach and just be the gap hitter, be the stolen base guy. That can maybe get us closer to that Corbin Carroll profile that we kind of talked about. Doc, does any of that discourage you or encourage you for what maybe Clark is currently doing?
Well, Turner turned it on. Turner turned, and I mean, he started off with the World Baseball,
Hmm.
Championship, the Classic, and he was killing it, and he had struggles, and then he actually had a pretty killer end of the year. And this year, he was like a top 20 bat until he got hurt. So, I know that slump sticks in our head, but I think it might have been contract pressure or just, you know, yeah, I don't know. It seems like he'll be okay. I it's gonna be a time will tell situation. I think we've kind of said it all with Max Clark here. Uh, yeah, let's not destroy the hit tool. Let's make sure he's doing that first and keeps doing that. So yeah, and if the hey, if the power gets there, let's not understate what that means. That means he's the number one prospect in baseball, in my opinion. I mean,
Well,
if no,
that's
if he becomes like a 30 home run kind of guy, like that's what I'm saying, like if he's a 25
yeah.
to 30, that's the only reason he's not being discussed as that yet, is because that's the only hold. No one's talking about any other problem.
Well, and I think too, the classification, the class that he's surrounded with, right? When you look at Corbin Carroll being announced as the number one prospect or around the number one prospect conversation, you had him and you had Gunner. So you had essentially an MLB All Star caliber player right there with him. Where in years past we've had Jurickson Profar as the number one prospect in baseball, which we've seen now what that is, which is a good baseball player, a heck of a lot better than I am, and sure as heck made a lot more money than I have. So good for you, Jurickson. Doc, you've got a nice arm up next though for us, and this is a guy you've been touting all season. You were really aggressive with him during FYPDs. Tell us a little bit about Thomas White.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy. The misses or the early struggles stick out for me with some of these guys, but Thomas White's not one of them. 6'5", 210. The kid was a prodigy as a 14-year-old up in Massachusetts. I think he was throwing 92 or something silly as a 14-year-old. It was kind of insane. And then again, COVID kind of messed with his hype train, and so he actually got paid the same. Folks, when you're looking at FYPD targets, look at what teams are putting up for signing bonus as opposed to the draft slot, because that says a lot to me. So I see Thomas White getting basically the same price, same bonus money as Noble Meyer, who has significantly more hype. But you look at who they are, and some people think White has more upside. Some like serious scouts. I don't really want to necessarily play that game. They're both so young. There's so many outcomes. Both very talented. But the fact that we can compare them at all, it means, hey, you should probably be looking into adding him, especially in the little spring breakout there. He struck out 3 straight top St. Louis Cardinal prospects. The Victor Scott strikeout doesn't seem so impressive now, but the Thomas Sagasi is a season, maybe might be a Spencer Steer guy one day if all cracks right. Just a baseball player, as we've been saying. But the fact that he came in there against guys with way more experience, he struck out the side, and then now in his first real, sample of pro ball, we are seeing him. He got 3.18 ERA. His walks are okay, 4.5 per nine. Striking out a bunch of batters. He's getting better lately too. That's what actually I looked at earlier today. I am not. It's so tough with these like 18, 19, 20-year old, these high school kids uh, coming out and having their first pro exposure. I feel like even more so than batters. I'm really disregarding the first few starts. It's a brand new world for them. So yeah, you look at after his third start, he's got the numbers come down to like he's got a 1.93 ERA. He's walked 5 since then to 20. Sorry, walked 9 to 29 strikeouts. So he's things are picking up. I'd say look into Thomas White, folks. He's got a fastball in the upper 90s. He's got a starter's pitch mix. Yeah, his dad liked something I posted on Twitter once.
Now, Ryan, before I get your take on Thomas White, I just wanted to throw this out there because, Doc, as you were kind of talking and commenting at the success of a young player and kind of the transitions that we can see throughout their career before they become major league relevant, it made me think a lot of Mackenzie Gore. Mackenzie Gore 2019 split between high A and double A, was 9-2 in 20 games started, 101 innings, had 135 strikeouts. His whip set at a .83, and his ERA was at a 1.69. Just pure dominance at 20 years old. We saw the progressive change throughout his career as a lefty through the ups and downs of that prospect pedigree. But I think ultimately the excitement for Thomas White is there. The stuff is there. The question is, how long does it take for him to become fantasy relevant? But definitely returning value on that FYPD investment a lot of you made. And if not, a target, I think. Ryan, what are your thoughts of Thomas White early in his career?
I think I'm on the Thomas White train, man. He's Doc is the one that kind of put me onto him during FYPD season, and I grabbed him in a few spots. I haven't seen too much tape on him, just kind of a guy that I've glossed over, but I've been following the stat line, and he seems he seems to be able to pitch pretty well. And I mean, like you said, he's 19 years old, first full season. We'll see how he does with a full season's workload. I think that's always important for these prep prospects that come out. Although with travel ball now, man, they're throwing probably 140 innings a year all year round. So at this point, who knows? You're just hoping that their arm doesn't fall off.
So that's interesting. And I kind of want to deviate here before we just toss the two names I have out. And Ryan, please, if this is personal, you don't have to answer. But I wanted to ask you, you have a couple of kids in travel
Mm.
ball. They're younger. Have you started to see any changes at all in the way that kids are going to be handled within the community? Maybe not even necessarily with your own family, but is there a buzz around travel baseball and the way things have been done to maybe protect younger kids? Or have you not seen anything yet?
So my kids are too young at this point to
Okay.
really. I mean, my daughter's in 10U, so it's not even. This is her second full year in 10U. Uh, but I'm kind of in the travel ball culture right now, and I
Hmm.
can say pretty confidently that it probably isn't going to change because it's such a cash cow for
Okay.
tournament directors, for the leagues, everything, for the teams themselves. It's it it's honestly a problem, and I could go off on a wild ass
Yeah.
tangent on the pros and cons of travel baseball for and softball for kids. But I think something has to change eventually. They talked about maybe the MLB acquiring Perfect Game, and that would kind of matriculate down to travel ball as well. Uh, but man, it's as they get more, as they get older in travel ball, the schedules are brutal. It's really a wealthy person sport. If you can't, I mean, you're paying a lot of money to play, and these teams that travel all around the world, really, man, it's kind of amazing, and they push these kids as hard as they can, and they kind of lack fundamentals. Kind of like AAU basketball has the same problem where you play a bunch of games but you rarely practice. Uh, and now everything is obviously velocity. These kids, I just saw a video of 13 or 14-year-old kid throwing 85. Like, you're not supposed to be doing that when you're that young, man. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's it's something that you just have to deal with. And if you're a kid in America and you want to get drafted and be a major league baseball player, you unfortunately probably have to play travel ball and get on the travel circuit and go to the showcases. And then, especially for pitchers, it's such a tough. They want them to throw all year round because the only time scouts can get out to watch them is in the off season for the scouts. So October, November, December, and these kids have been playing all year round already, and then they want them to still throw their hardest. And it's just a big problem that I don't see ending anytime soon.
Yeah, and I think that brings me to then the next question, which ties us right back into Major League Baseball. This past week, Manfred came out and talked about the injury issues, and obviously we have seen the numbers coming out of spring training, coming out of April, being the highest year to date in almost the last 3 or 4 seasons. You kind of talked about it, throwing all year round. I had a curious thought this week where it was like, well, maybe the injuries that we see in April and early May and in March as well are because of the ramp up, right? It's the shutdown and it's the starting point. So I kind of just wanted to see both of your opinions quickly. Do you think it is better that these players do stop and then start to kind of hold on to the longevity of their arms, or do you think maybe Major League Baseball needs to transition into like dedicated off-season throwing programs so that when these pitchers come into spring training, it isn't this massive load onto the elbow, onto the shoulder. I mean, I don't have enough physical data or even understanding. I just remember being playing as a kid. I threw all year round, right? I didn't throw as in regards to a program, but it wasn't necessarily a like, okay, it's spring training, you start. Doc, what are your thoughts just on this kind of this thought experiment I just asked you about?
I think we just need to extract a little bit of. I've said this before. We got to extract a little bit of Nolan Ryan's DNA and just splice it with any upcoming promising pitcher, and then we can just make freak athletes that way, and we'll be fine. I don't know, man. I think it's. I feel like a lot of these conversations are almost just. It feels like I'm living in a fairy tale, right? Because of what Ryan just said. It's unfortunate we have such. We have to go in here. It's almost political. We can't just like blow it up. We have to think of how to replace it, right? There's so much infrastructure.
Yeah.
Think about it, the politics behind. When I say politics now, I mean just between teams, right? So and leagues and organizations and travel balls and what this coach wants to do, and oh hey kid, you're never, or even just you're never going to get the attention of this scout or this school if you don't throw X miles per hour, which is just it's like insane. I mean, I understand to some extent, like if you're way off, if you're, I guess if you were just throwing 70s only off speed stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, no, you need the fastball that is, you know, reasonably high. That said, it's like, man, Drew Thorpe looks pretty cool. Zach Gallen's pulled it off. There are these stories, there are these guys who seem to be able to do it. I
Imanaga
don't know,
this
man.
season, right?
Imanaga, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I wish we could just throw this logic at them and offer that up, but I don't know, man. It seems very complicated and beyond my pay grade.
Yeah. Ryan, what are your thoughts after, kind of just talking about the travel baseball world and how, maybe that transitions to Major League Baseball? Do you think these guys as professionals need to have more monitoring in the off season so it's not so violent of a startup? Or do you think there's maybe a different opinion on the table?
Yeah, no, I think what's interesting is that I was listening to a podcast with Saris, and he was talking about, and I like to quote him on this because it makes a lot of sense to me. And I think Trevor May was on, and they're saying when players get done with the season, they'll have little contact with the team for the most part, and if there's a nagging injury, they'll wake up one day, my back, I think I'm just going to take it easy, and then they keep doing that, and then boom, you get to spring training, and it's like, oh, no, this is actually a problem. And
Devin
yeah,
Williams.
for sure, that's exactly what it was. He
Yep.
thought it would just go away, right? I worry though, because if a guy goes to one of the pitching labs, wherever, whichever one, over the off season, and they want to learn a new pitch or something, they're throwing at max effort during the off season. I don't think that's the greatest. I work in the medical field. I have a small medical knowledge, and I get to talk to a lot of orthopedic surgeons. Uh, and it's not good to throw max effort all the time. You could, I think it's encouraged to keep throwing, but not at max effort all the time. Uh,
Which is interesting because that number is really being looked at right
yeah,
now, right? Especially by, utilizing the differentiating in between, average velocity and max
Yep.
velocity, and kind of the difference that you have there. I think we get to see one of those today in Soriano. I didn't actually get to see his stat line, but he's going to be a really interesting case. Paul Skeens too, as he starts to dial it back to your point of like, well, what does max velocity really do to the arm,
Right.
right? And is it a balance of both? Is it a balance of max velocity as well as, just taking an off season off because you may have a nagging injury? I think this is definitely a deeper conversation, but I wanted to get your opinions both on it, and starting to build this foundation as we move forward, and maybe start to see changes. But we've got two more names on the list for today. I'm not really going to talk about them because they are, I would say, more of the obvious front running prospects. But I just wanted to see if either of you had any input, or if you wanted to talk about these guys. My two names were Lazaro Montes for the batter and Drew Thorpe for the pitcher. And I chose these two because around this time last year is where I started getting really excited about both. We started seeing profile changes to Montez's K rate as the promotion happened for him. Obvious the prodigious power. And then for Thorpe, we really got to see some domination and some hype starting to build right before, say, June or July, where, that prospect soared up. Doc, I want to start with you. We obviously have talked about these two before. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of toss in?
I mean, just it's almost the same situation with each of them. In terms of they have these organizations that just seem to be happy slow balling. They're different ages, different positions, different, one's a batter, one's a pitcher. But yeah, Chicago White Sox, my gosh, dude, they're just like, I hate you guys so much. They're sending, they send up Brian Ramos, who's struggling in the minors, no problem. And then bring Oscar Colas up and down, up and down. Like, it's just, I don't even understand what that's about. And then Drew Thorpe is just massacring these poor kids in Double A. Like a 1 ERA, just 150, I think now. That's even after he had like a rough blow up, mini blow up start. Got 3 runs in the first inning, and still he's got a 1.5 ERA. The big question for Thorpe is, as much as I love to tout him as this control master, George Kirby's having some weird results right now with a very upper 90s fastball. Like he's got some serious stuff, and he's a control artist. And we're seeing what happens when he's just off a little bit on a couple pitches. So Drew Thorpe, how much can he afford to miss his spots? I guess would be my concern. I'm huge. I love Thorpe. I think he's great, and I think it's weird because he got this big dog presence. He's big shoulders. He looks like a really strong guy. You think he could maybe dig a little bit for more velocity? Maybe I would really love to find out if he's been approached. Like maybe he just doesn't want to move his velocity up. He wants
Yeah.
to keep his arm intact. Maybe he's trying to do that. I don't know. That's just me saying things, but it's a very interesting situation because he's very much a low 90s guy. Justin Steele was another name we didn't really mention. He sits like 191, with his fastball, and he's been doing all right. Anyway, so we'll see with Drew Thorpe, and then with Montez, what hasn't been said about him, Baby Jordan. It's like, come on, Seattle. They like, are we going to see, like I said this on a podcast yesterday? I got on the fantasy ace ball with Tim Kanak, and I was saying that we're going to see Tyler Locklear as a 32-year-old rookie or something. Like, these guys just, I don't know. It just feels like some of these guys with Seattle, they just don't have any rush in bringing them up. They're a really weird franchise. I love so many of their prospects. Clearly, they're doing something great in the minors. So yeah, I would love to see him move beyond A ball. My goodness, guys, come on now. He'll be 20 in 150 days. Let's see what he can do against some better pitching because both Lazaro Montez. I mean, we want to talk about number one prospect potential. We don't have to imagine the power here, folks. It's in that bat. So let's just see how he does against higher grade pitching at this point.
Yeah, and the K rate down to 16.4%, walk rate up to 14.9%. Eerily starting to showcase a similar line, not skill set of James Wood, though. Both had strikeout concerns and both have really completely changed. Ryan, what are your thoughts of both of these players, and which one are you more excited that maybe could provide, I would say, top 50 player value at the major league level?
I think Montez would be the best bet for top 50 player. But I'm with Doc, man. I love Drew Thorpe. And I think when you look at someone like George Kirby, uh, it's a good comp. But I really like Thorpe tunnels his fastball off his changeup exceedingly well, and that's why he's been able to get away with it throughout the Double A uh, league. He knows how to pitch, and it sounds so stupid because we're obviously stat analytic driven, but sequencing is so important for a pitcher, and he knows how to do it. He knows what is working for him, and he knows how to execute the game plan. When he got traded to the White Sox, I thought they would start him off in AAA because he's kind of a finished product. I think he probably won't add any more velo, and I don't think he has to really. He can reside at 93. He might be able to top out at 96. Who knows? I don't think he ever has, but like Doc was saying, maybe he doesn't want to. It's not the end all be all. He has good movement on the fastball, which is important. And like I said, he tunnels it off the changeup super well, and then he has the uh, curveball that works really well off of it too, and the cutter. And it's. I think he's a good bet to be like a top 40 pitcher uh, in Dynasty. So I'm definitely buying into him. But Montez could be number one prospect pretty easily. I think I have him. Oh, I just dropped my fucking mouse. I think I have him 19th overall
Okay.
right now, and I don't mind that they're letting him sit in single A. He only has a little over 300 plate appearances there anyway, so it's not even a full season yet, and he's still young. We like to see aggressive promotions in the fantasy community, but sometimes that's not the best thing for the player. Uh, you like to see them dominate a level first consistently before you promote them. And like Doc was saying, man, the Mariners are doing something right. So who am I to misjudge them or judge them?
Well, and such a big drop in K
Right.
percentage. We're talking about 25.3% at complex last year, 25% at A last year, dropping down to 16.4. We are only 41 games into his season. I think, kind of to your point, they want this change in approach to
Yeah.
stick, right? As opposed to what we've seen, I think, like look at Ellie, right? Where it's like, okay, Ellie figured it out. It's like, well, no, Ellie just made a conscious effort for 3
Right.
weeks, and he's back to his old ways. So, I think that's a really good point you bring up. Now, it's gonna be all for today. We had a few other things that we, like always, are not going to get to, but hopefully, if we have you on again, Ryan, we can touch on some of those. Doc, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we say goodbye?
Um, yeah, jeez, man. Gosh, I always say my cheesy one liner to end it. Yeah, those I'm your Huckleberry.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. This was awesome. Hopefully, we have you on very soon again. Um, for everyone else, we will see you guys next week.
See you.
Thank you.